Now, the presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, Adeniyi Kachikwu, has been described as illegal in his purported suspension by the former National Working Committee of the party, led by Ralph Oke-Nwosu, whose tenure expired a few days ago on 28th of August. He described all actions by the NWC since then as null and void. At a press briefing flanked by some state party executives in Abuja, in reaction to his alleged suspension, Kachikwu accused Nwosu of seeking an illegal extension of his tenure as national chairman, which was opposed by state party chairman, hence the backdoor decision to suspend the party's presidential candidate. He accused the former party executive of working with some bigger political parties to trade his mandate.
When the chairman of the different state chapters made known to me that the tenure of this NWC was coming to an end and that Nwosu was seeking an illegal or backdoor extension and that they were not in support of this, I told them that I, as the presidential candidate of this party, will do everything within my power to ensure that I uphold the Constitution. Beyond that, my party, the ADC, has been known in the past or has had this dubious distinction as a party that traded the mandate of its candidates. In recent memory, we can remember the late Meliafa, who was the last presidential candidate of the party, and what happened to him when on election day, the party chose to support another party having traded his mandate. We saw that happen in so many elections that the party has held, where the party is always trading its candidates. And I've made it clear to them that under my watch as presidential candidate of this party, my mandate is not negotiable, and the mandate of any candidate in this party will not be negotiated.
As we are now, is the NEC that is in charge of African Democratic Congress, because the tenure of the NWC, that's National Working Committee, expired last Sunday, 28th of August. We have called for an emergency NEC meeting, which we hold on Monday. And from there, we are going to elect interim or caretaker committee.
So INEC, in its own wisdom, should do the needful and ensure that there is no rancor in ADC, because we don't want to frustrate the integrity of our constitution, and that's why we are upholding it right now.
Well, among those that spoke there was Adeniyi Kachikwu, who until yesterday was unanimously recognized by every member of the African Democratic Congress as the party's presidential ticket holder ahead of the forthcoming election. Now let's try to make further sense of the emerging issues by speaking with Adeniyi Kunnu, a researcher and broadcast professional who is the spokesman of the Adeniyi Kachikwu Presidential Campaign Organization. He joins us here in the studio. I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on The Morning Show.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Yes, Adeniyi made some very grave allegations against the African Democratic Congress that they are known for selling the mandate of its presidential candidates to other parties or to other people. Please expatiate further on this.
Let me make it clear to the world that my boss, His Excellency Adeniyi Kachikwu, is one of the most circumspect of persons. And before he makes a statement on an issue, he has done concrete findings. He's not a careless speaker. And if we actually have to look even deeper, he didn't reveal everything that you could call the worms in the can. But let's make it very clear here. My boss actually believed that this is the time for the country to move forward. And the audience table must be made very clean so that as you go into the elections to take on boldly the mandate of Nigerians, then you must know that your charity has to begin from home. Whatever it is that anybody has said, let me remind the world here that in June of this year, a primary was held in Abeokuta and 13 persons contested to actually hold the ticket of the party. And the delegates voted unanimously for my boss, His Excellency Adeniyi Kachikwu, and he emerged. And INEC validated that process to the extent that INEC actually have has, as we speak, my boss's name on their portal as the valid candidate for this. So it is actually poor intellection that has resulted in what we have, where people who understand that there is a constitution of the party, as amended in 2018, that prescribes processes. Let's say this, there was an event on August the 22nd where you convoked an emergency NEC meeting. According to Article 23A and B of the ADC, as amended 2018, you need to give 7 days notice. That was contravened. Then if you go to Articles 24 of the same ADC Constitution as amended in 2018, it prescribes clearly that it is only the National Working Committee in a convention, basically, that can have any tenure of anybody elongated or extended, or that if at all you want to have anybody in office, then you need to also have a convention through which the person emerges. All of these guidance, as stipulated in the constitution of the ADC, have been roundly violated by those that have actually left office August the 28th. So it comes to me as something very laughable that a group of people whose tenure have actually have actually expired or ended, are the ones suspending somebody that the world already recognizes as a candidate of the party. So it's laughable here. And I think it is also important for us to know that if this country must move forward, you have to be able to look in. Was the ADC is a very different party from others. And we are a party that believe that because the people believe in us, and we do not want people to accuse us of what they're accusing other parties of. That is why this is happening. So whoever says that His Excellency maybe Kachikwu is suspended is actually acting in a very ridiculous manner. I must say that clearly here.
Would you say this is a retaliatory move in relation to, of course, this request for an extension of tenure on the part of Ralph Omosu?
You know, let us say this very clearly. Even if you occupy an elective office in this country, say the position that my boss seeks to occupy, you have 2 terms of 4 years each. The constitution of the ADC has that stipulated. So if at all you want another thing done, you can do it the second period of your coming, which is 8 years. And since the constitution of the ADC actually has that clearly stated, it comes as also a surprise to us that INEC, being the umpire, has overlooked that which is their primary responsibility over the years. And I think that this is also calling on INEC, that INEC should look inwards. Who are those trying to make a mess of the things it is doing to ensure that electoral processes and party representation are both very fair and as well equitable? If you look at what is happening, in this country, he has served the longest, 17 years. Maximum that he should have been in office is 8 years. And there is no provision for an extension. We are saying that for instance, the most legitimate body now will be the forum of, say, chairpersons, who of course have their tenure without a problem. So when you talk about the National Working Committee and the former chairman of the party in the person of Chief Ralph Omosu, they do not occupy any elective position right now. So anything they do is even illegal. Let me say this. The press release they gave doesn't have a signature. The sign of authentication of anything that you put forward has to be the signature authenticating it. And many people were actually maybe oversight, or they didn't quite look at that well. So they just went ahead with it. But when something is not signed, it cannot be considered. So anything they do right now is illegal. And this is using this opportunity as a spokesman for my boss to tell the world that they should be careful how they deal with him so that it doesn't lead them astray.
All right. Mr. Bamidele Ajadi, the Deputy National Chairman, amongst other things, first of all, has said that the reason for the removal or the suspension of your own boss is because he engaged in anti-party activities. And he went on to say that part of the statements that we actually, or the excerpt from the interview that we actually read, he actually accused him of crass irresponsibility, gross misconduct, an attempt to blackmail the party into doing his bidding.
Okay, let me say this. You see, there's what we call airy platitudes. Those are the things you have in the press release they've given. What are the specifics of the issue? When I open my mouth to begin this conversation, I refer to the Constitution and the press release. They could dare and refer to any part of our party's constitution where they can describe what crass irresponsibilities and anti-party. Listen to me. My boss, His Excellency Dumebi Kachikwu, is the leading light of this party, vying for the position of president. He therefore must ensure that not only his own candidature, but of course the candidature of those vying for elected positions across this country is done on a platform of legality. So what Ajadi, who himself doesn't hold an executive position now, is saying is just null and void. I refer to Articles 24 of this party. You can also go to Articles 2, Article 17 of the ADC Constitution as amended 2018. Everything I've said, they have referred to part of the Constitution. But this statement doesn't have a reference to the Constitution of the party. It is therefore invalid. Let's say this. When somebody sees that a process is not legitimate, you should be able to hold a position, because if they are to speak, they refer to you. And my boss doesn't want to go into history as somebody who saw what he hopes to correct in Nigeria when he comes into office next year. And those same things are happening. Let me say this because it's key for me, for the world to know. In the course of submitting the name of my boss's running mate, there were certain things done by the party executive himself, Chief Rafunwosu, by wanting to foist another person on the presidential candidate of the party, which is Dumebi Kachikwu. He resisted that. Now they went ahead again and actually held certain strategy meeting and eventually mentioned somebody as his campaign director without due validation from the person that is in the eye of this election. You don't shave a man's hair in his absence. And we must understand that these kinds of illegality cannot be allowed to continue. The ADC is a very decent party. And we do not want to be associated with the shenanigans that have become the body language and the explicit act of many other parties in this country. And the thing that should be done by Chief Ralph Nwosu, respectfully so, is to admit that his tenure has expired, as I have referred to sections of the constitution of the party, and tender his resignation, or best speaks with my boss, so that we can rejoice in his end of his tenure, and he just goes ahead and continues as a political party member. We are not exiting him from the party because obviously he's still a party member, but he doesn't hold any elective position, and he therefore cannot stipulate, steer, or administer the activities of this party going into the 2023 election. We don't want to do that, please.
All right, Mr. Kunnu, let's talk about the specifics of the issue that actually incited this action in the first place. Could you shed some more light? It's rather vague. And of course, we don't have Mr. Ajadi here to speak for himself. But of course, there's also been some links to a video that does not embody the ethos according to Mr. Ajadi, now the ethos of the party. Could you shed some more light on that? Because I am yet to see the video. I don't know if you have seen it, Aaron.
Okay. Let me say this. There was a particular meeting held on August the 22nd where the former national chairman of the party, Chief Ralph Nwosu, actually called within a 24-hour period a meeting of the National Executive Council. In the first place, the people that were supposed to be at that meeting were not there. Strange persons were the ones who sat at that meeting to extend the tenure of a man who has less than a week to the expiration of his tenure. According to the ADC Constitution 2018 as amended, such meetings can be convoked if you have a 7 days notice. First, there's a violation of how you convoke such emergency meetings. Secondly, Articles 24 of the party stipulates that for you to have an extension, if at all such will be considered, then it has to be under the auspices of the National Working Committee, which without a doubt comprises of the entire state chairman of the party. Most of them were not around. The people that were there obviously were strange faces, and it is also disgraceful to have it that the gate was locked against many people that should be in. They caused some members of the security operatives to be there, preventing those that would have said no to the extension because it is something they do not countenance. Now, having done that, His Excellency Dumebi Kachikwu had to hold a very informative position and distinct position that is not part of the charade, which was carried out on August the 22nd. Now, on August the 28th, his tenure had expired. But certain things were still being done that can be considered outrightly as anti-party activities by Chief Ralph Nwosu and, of course, members of his former executives who are no more in office. That resulted again in my boss holding a position that such illegalities should not happen. And let me say this. Up until the recent video that was put out for people to have clarity on the issue, my boss has been very circumspect. He has respected him as somebody that he should reason with, because he also believes that if at all they are close to be laundered, it has to be laundered in your house, not outside. And every move made to deal as a civilized person with former chairman of the party, Chief Ralph Nwosu, seems to be falling on hard ground. And when it gets to a state where you are pushed to the wall, you really need to provide clarity. Don't forget, anybody seeking the #1 position in this country must be exemplary in his or her attitude. And in this case, my boss believes that for him to be able to actually get the further validation of the electorate, he has to ensure that such things do not happen. The reason Nigeria is actually at this stage is because even within the party, people don't respect the processes that should be followed through such that the people seeking elective positions emerge. The ADC as a party does not want to be associated with just illegalities. So the reason that they have been acting the way they have been acting is because every move they've been making to prevent him from actually having the proper sight of the things that we are doing ahead of the 2023 election, they just believe that they have to model it. And because he has insisted that...
No, but Mr. Jadi said that Mr. Kachikwu has refused to share with the party any meaningful, constructive, or reasonable presidential campaign roadmap. And they've tried to reason with him on that, and nothing has come out of it.
This is it. Okay, this is it. Let us understand the picture. Whilst my boss, for instance, he was in Dubai a few weeks ago, obviously for very needful strategic meetings. Before he left, they had a conversation. That was some weeks ago. That should be late July to early August. And he mentioned to these same people whose names you've mentioned that anything that must be done, I need to travel. It's very important for me. Sooner had he left the country than a meeting was held and somebody was announced as one who will head his campaign council. He had a conversation with them prior to his departure, assuring them that this is important for me to travel. When I return, we will have a conversation about the roadmap. And let us say this. Campaign officially begins September the 28th. There is blueprint evidently on ground regarding the roadmap. So when they're talking about not providing the roadmap, I really wonder what roadmap they want him to share with them. The party already has a structure. There are state chairmen across the states of the federation. And do not also forget that the people in question that are complaining will not essentially form the core of his campaign strategy because they had weeks to leave office. So if at all they are even complaining about a certain roadmap not shared with them, it most definitely has to be shared with the people that will be taking over from those whose tenure has essentially ended. So when people complain about the fact that nobody shares certain things with them, it is key to say here that they didn't even speak as those who understand that their tenure had expired.
No, but they said they've been waiting since the 9th of June when he emerged.
Okay, this is it. When you speak with people regarding your strategy or your roadmap, it has to be those who will be there for the long haul. And do not forget, there have been repeated meetings held here. When you say June, July, August, this is September. You have 2 months. Election is 6, 7, 8 months away. So how do you plan with people whose tenure will end in 2 months when you have an 8-month period to plan for the election and you have about a year to get into office and even begin the work essentially? So I think that people should understand this position that I hold has given clarity to this issue. And I think it is good for people in contemporary times such as we have it to deal in more civilized manner when you have this kind of issue. So the people talking do not even talk as those who have the authority to do so. So I think it is important for them to seek redress. Speaking very reasonably with a man who perhaps will say, you people may have advisory role to play, but in terms of being foot soldiers going into the 2023 election, come on, that cannot continue to happen.
All right, Mr. Kunnu, let's digress a little bit and look at the general political climate.
Okay, please.
If we look at the major political parties we have right
Yes,
now,
please.
there appears to be a bit of a trend of discordance and internal wranglings
Yes,
across
please.
political parties.
Okay.
You also alluded to this on one of your interactions with us on this platform.
please.
Question here is there any cause for alarm with the ADC?
The
It
ADC
appears that the discordance has made its way into your home. Is your house in order?
Oh, our house is in order. Let me say this for the world to hear. If anything was to worry the ADC or the concerns of my boss, the baby Kachikwu, it has to be if we had any improper thing done, and INEC has actually mentioned that. INEC already has recognized, even through paperwork, the candidacy of my boss. We have foot soldiers ready across 32 to 36 states of the Federation, and of course the Federal Capital Territory. So we are one bit not worried about people who are already out of office. Let us re-emphasize the fact that the people parading themselves as those suspending my boss cannot even, they don't have the authority to do that. So we don't have a problem. The ADC is set on its well-built track going into the 2023 election. Our strategies are in place, our blueprints in place, media collaboration in place, strategic partners in place, funding in place. These things are already set out clearly.
So are you saying that he, your boss, to maybe Kachikwu, will ignore this suspension or removal? Or if not so, what is his next line of action?
I think that if they have the guts enough, they should ensure it is litigable, and this will fall like a pack of unshuffled cards anywhere they go to in this country. If they had the temerity enough, I dare them go to court and describe what the party or anti-party activities are, side by side the constitution of the party. And for those that have purportedly extended the tenure of the former national chairman, should also come sit at the table of law and see if this will
Is he
stand.
going to ignore it?
No, no.
Or what is
What's
his
the
next
next
line of
course
The
of action?
reality is, do you bother yourself with something that is put on nothing? In law, we say you cannot place something on nothing. So this is actually what I'll describe as what is an abstract, floating in the air of inconsequence here. Let me say this for the world to hear. Whilst the people who put out that press statement are still party members, they cannot direct the course of this campaign. So they should be dignified enough to enjoy their retirement from office and observe. And when it is needful for us, we could seek a couple of advice from them, if need be, and perhaps maybe co-opt them where necessary as my boss chooses. But a situation where they want to steer the ship and the ship already has new captain, I think that we should not get it wrong here. So this at best is already an ignored suspension without signature, without recourse to the rule book, without realizing that if you do not have the authority and power, you can't suspend somebody. So INEC already understands that we're good to go. We have a clean bill of health with the umpire of the electoral process. So let us say it here, that the people in question who actually do this should find a way to seek solutions and reverse it themselves, because it is inconsequential. That is a fact. This doesn't stop us from going into the election. It doesn't stop us from moving. Whatever it is that they can take to INEC now cannot be countenanced because it is very illegal. So I dare them go to court if they could on this. So that is it for me.
Looking at the future, what is the next course of action? Of course, this is going to reveal some cracks in your party. It already sounds like there's some dissension, and a couple of people are 2 poles apart. How are you going to reunify your party?
In the first place, in every home, you can have misunderstanding. As my boss has always done, he believes that we can always work together with those who realize their errors, who discontinue anti-party activities, which this one is best described as. So if at all the people in question realize that, well, they are stepping wrongly on this, perhaps my boss, who has a good heart, will find certain room for them to actually, be a part of those who will work, but obviously not in this capacity as directing direction. But let us also say that as a party, the roadmap is very clear. We are good to go as far as this is concerned. We're just waiting for the green button on September the 20th to just roll out all that is already on ground. But it is important for people to also realize that we are the party to beat in this election, because my boss ticks all the boxes of proper representation. 2 things or 3 are fundamental. There's something that will be introduced, when we assume office, when His Excellency assumes office. The first being what is contained in the Patriot Act that eventually be passed by the National Assembly. And what does it seek to do? It seeks to create a parallel between the citizens of the country and those who have the privilege of leading them with regards to the health sector of the country. You are a president of the country. You should be able to use the health services of your country. You hold a political office. You should actually be able to send your children to any school in the country. Those are 2 of the many things that the Patriot Act seeks to correct. And it is important to say that it is also within the youth demography. Over 60% of Nigerians approximately are within the youth demography. He appeals to them. Having felt and still feels or takes their pulse, he understands most definitely the things that many people who are part of the old order do not understand. So what beauty it is that we have in a perfect picture of a man who indeed occupies the most pivotal position in these times to go into the election and win that election come 2023. So Dumebi Kachikwu doesn't have a problem with regard to this. And do not also forget that part of what it seeks to correct is what has been happening over the years, where the old order wants things to continue. And a situation where the old order that are supposed to be full of examples for younger people to follow are moving in that direction, it is time for us to start addressing it. And we do this without fear or favor. We'll do it because it is what is just. We'll do it because it is what must be done. And the ADC come 2023 will win the presidential election. Take that as a point of note here.
All right, we shall remember that and hold you to it. Mr. Adeniyi Kunnu, we want to thank you very much for joining us and shedding some light on the situation.
Thank you
very much.
for having me here. Thank you.